Welcome to episode 1
Yes.
of our new show. She is Lais, and I am the coach, and that is the name of our show.
First of all, if there's ever been a time for personal bubble, this is
We will always stay true to what we do. What you're doing is going to get you to the next place.
Right.
Throw the list away. What? It's only a matter of time before you cave.
You can look way better than you used to.
Such a great experience.
Well, like it knows everything you've given.
Shown curiosity. What if it actually works?
I've been chopped down como persona.
100%.
An extra vitamin.
City right now. Sometimes it is a member.
Welcome, everybody. Peace out, everybody.
Welcome, everybody, to Lais and The Coach. We are back.
We're back.
I've been wanting,
Bitches.
I think that we're going to change the name to
Yes.
Next Level with Lais and The Coach, or Lais and The Coach Next Level Podcast. What do you guys think?
like better?
What do you think? Next Level's got to go on it,
It's gotta happen.
right? It's either going to be the Next Level Podcast with Lais and The Coach, or Lais and The Coach Next Level, because we're graduating.
We're graduating.
We're going to the next level.
And it's next level like NXT.
NXT, like our team.
LVL. Yes.
Yeah. So let us know which one you guys think is best.
Mhm.
But for today, I'm going to open the podcast with a question.
Okay.
What would you do if you had to start all over?
In what?
That's a great question. In anything, right? What would you do if you had to start your business all over? What would you do if you had to start work all over? What would you do if you had to start dating all over?
Oh my God.
What would you do if you had to start a new relationship? Or what if you became a parent again, if you were
Oh
a parent
my
now?
God. This gets worse and worse.
Or what if you've never been a parent and you become a parent? Like, what would you do if you had to start
From
all over
scratch.
from scratch?
So business or financially or a relationship or parenting or whatever.
Yes. And the reason that we're going to start with that question is because on today's episode, we are going to talk about what I had to do when I had to start all over with learning how to walk, learning how to eat, and learning how to do all those things, because 7.5 years ago, I got Guillain-Barré Syndrome and became fully paralyzed. And while we did an episode, I think like 6 years ago or so, and it's only on audio, and I think it's only on
I
SoundCloud,
know, it's like a super old episode.
we never did one on video, and we
And
post.
it's been a while.
It's been a while, and I post videos all the time about it. And we were going to do it last month, May, because May is Guillain-Barré and CIDP awareness. CIDP is chronic inflammatory demyelinating neuropathy. It's a mouthful.
Polyneuropathy. No?
Polyneuropathy.
Yeah,
CIDP.
CIDP.
Polyneuropathy.
We're going to go into all of it.
Right.
But if you're
Polyneuropathy
confused,
meaning a lot of neuropathy.
if
Because
you're
I got both. If
A
I'm
lot
going to do
of-
it, I'm going to do it.
a lot of times people see the videos and they're like, what happened to
Yeah.
you, right? Some people will ask, and then some people like won't ask, and then later it'll come up. They're like, yeah, I've seen the videos, but I never wanted to ask what
Right.
happened to you.
So we wanted to
So
do
we're
a
gonna cover
video
it.
because I think that for me, it gave me a lot of insight on life, but it also gave me a lot of insight on how to coach, because I am very personally familiar with what it's like to start at the beginning,
Start
because
from
I had to,
scratch.
right?
Mhm.
And that's why I asked that question at the beginning. So let's go all the way back to 2015. December. Our son was 6 months old, and we were in the middle of a million different things. I was remodeling the gym that we had at the time. The apartment that we lived at, we had to move. It was December of 2015. It was the holidays.
Christmas was around the corner.
Christmas was around the corner.
It was Junior's first Christmas.
It was Junior's first
Bree
Christmas.
had just moved in with us a couple months prior.
Bree had just moved in with us
Fully.
and had just started losing her hair.
Yes.
So needless to say, there was a lot going on.
Yes.
Needless to say.
Yeah.
So around, I would say like the week before or a few days before we were scheduled to move, I got a cold, a really bad cold. One of the worst ones I've ever had. And like I was literally like flu-like symptoms. And it wasn't that other thing that we all went through that you can't say on camera.
You'll get canceled.
Right. It was way before that. It was 2015.
Mm-hmm. But it was a bad flu. It was the first time I'd
It was
ever seen
really
a flu
bad.
like take you out like that. Because
Yeah.
I remember I was started doing some of the moving stuff because I'm like, we don't have time.
Right.
And you're like, I literally like can't.
Right.
Like, give me a day. Like, and you were, you know, trying to sleep it off. And Bree and I
NyQuil,
did a lot of the
Dayquil,
moving.
all of it. Nothing was working.
Yeah.
And I couldn't shake it off. I would get a little bit better, but I just couldn't shake it. And obviously, you know, in retrospect, if you think about it, it's like, you know, so many things going on at once. The amount of stress,
A new baby,
that, you know, I was the amount of stress I had, the amount of stress I was putting on my body. I had also just started prepping for a bodybuilding show,
yeah.
right? So all of those things were happening at once, and then I couldn't shake this flu. I couldn't shake it. And
we were approaching Christmas.
we passed Christmas because you wanted me to go to the doctor, and I did not want to go to the doctor. And I actually didn't end up going. I went to an urgent care just after New Year's.
Oh, I thought it was before Christmas. The
No.
urgent care.
No,
Okay.
no, because we moved into that new apartment at Christmas. And I went to did I go to the urgent care before New Year's
Yeah.
or right after?
I think
Because we
went-
celebrated New Year's here in Orlando,
Right.
didn't we?
No, everything gets blurred right over time. We celebrated Christmas. We celebrated New Year's in Pines in our new apartment, and Angel and Alyssa came down there.
Okay.
So you had already taken the medication because you had already gone to the urgent care because you were better.
So it was before New Year's. So I went to urgent care. They did a strep throat test. It wasn't that. She said it was just a flu, and they gave me
Prednisone.
prednisone,
How
right?
did you forget? The devil.
Well, we don't know if that was the cause. You know, it's correlated.
Okay.
Correlation and causation are not the same.
Okay, so continue.
So I got prednisone, and I felt better like
almost
overnight.
instantly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
almost instantly.
Like the next day, you
Better,
were better.
like better.
We
And
celebrated New Year's.
we celebrated New Year's, and then one morning I woke up, and normally I sleep, and I still sleep, you know, like with my arm crossed. If you're listening, I'm showing the camera. But with my arm crossed, I kind of sleep like that, and I squeeze really tight while I'm sleeping. So every morning I wake up with my arm like numb, like tingling, because I've been like in that position all night. But that particular morning when I woke up, I couldn't shake it off.
And
Like,
around what time was this? Like January?
it was early January.
Early January.
It was
yeah.
early January. The first week of January. And I just couldn't shake it. But I didn't pay no mind because...
You definitely didn't tell me anything.
Right, because I wake up like that every morning. And it's like, by the time, from the moment that I get out of bed till, let's say I'm brushing my teeth, it would be better. And it just wasn't, right? So whatever, just a tingling sensation all day.
Yeah.
And then...
No big deal. Tingling.
No big deal.
Tingling arm.
Continued with the day. Next day, the next arm felt like that. And I'm like, all right, that's a little bit weird. And then by week's end, I was like just really tired. And I felt that tingling everywhere, right? Like my hands, my feet, and I was just really drained, really tired.
Still, I don't know anything that's happening. I had no idea.
Right. And then I remember it was a Saturday, and you invited your sister over for lunch, and I went to GNC to get something to improve like blood circulation and took a nap, right? Because I was just dead tired. And then I asked you for help opening a water bottle or Pepsi.
Was it Pepsi?
One or the other. I couldn't physically open it. Like I just didn't have enough strength to get it
And you
open.
know, women out there, you know that's weird because anytime I need anything open, like a can of sauce or like anything, I'm like, can you open this? Right? Like I can never open anything. And I'm like, a bottle of water. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like I was so genuinely confused because we were both tired and we had a new baby and we weren't sleeping and we were stressed and there was a lot of things going on, but I can't open a bottle of water.
Right. And then I continued to move forward, didn't pay it no mind. By the middle of the next week, I was getting like progressively weaker. And I thought that I had probably hurt myself working out and pinched a nerve because I just couldn't shake that numbing feeling, right? And I'm like, you know, like I'm getting weaker and it's like in my extremities, I'm like, maybe I was pulling something and I pinched a nerve and it just won't loosen up. Maybe I was leg pressing. There's a video of me leg pressing like a bunch of, I'm like, probably pinched something there. Who knows how I got hurt, but I got hurt. So the solution was, let me just keep training. because if I keep training and stay warm, I can get everything to loosen up. So I go to the gym, I get on the bike for 10 minutes and I'm like barely pedaling, right? Like, wow, like I'm really, really tired. So let me go sit in the sauna for a little bit, get warm, get hot. And that helped a little bit, but nothing. Next day, I'm more tired. I'm like, well, let me go to the gym before I go teach a class. Didn't stop working, didn't stop doing anything. I go to the gym, and the LA Fitness that I went to was a 2-story LA Fitness, and the cardio stuff was on the 2nd floor. And I go up, like it took me a while to get up the steps, but nothing out of the ordinary for what the last couple of days had looked like. But then by the time that I finished the bike, which was only like 15 minutes or so, it took me 20 minutes to go down the stairs.
I also didn't know that either.
Right.
We clearly have some trust issues still from that time of our lives. I had no idea.
And then I left from there to go teach a class at the park. And by the time I got to the park, it was difficult for me to lift my legs like through the grass. Like I was walking from where I parked the car to the park bench where we used to have our group class. We used to do an outdoor group class. And from where I parked my car to the bench must have been maybe a 30-second walk, if that, maybe less. Like I physically couldn't lift my feet through the grass.
That I was there for. I'm like, what's happening to you? And he's like, I can't really lift my feet like on the grass. And I'm like, that's not normal. Right.
So then I taught the class and I was holding on to the park bench the whole time because I felt like I was going to fall. So I said, I'll just teach next to the park bench. And asterisk there, like I didn't stop. Right. And I think that in retrospect, some people are like, you should have done this and you should have done that. But honestly, like I feel like when you're going through something, if you stop, then you do put yourself in a position to, could it have been worse? Could it have been something else? Of course it could have. But I think in life, we all go through these difficult moments and we want to stop. And honestly, just that just wasn't an option, right? Because there were classes to teach. We had the gym to keep running. Like stopping wasn't an option. And I just kept going all the way until that weekend, right? It was Martin Luther King weekend, MLK weekend. And that Sunday, we went to church. And then the church had like 3 steps to go up, and it was hard to go up the 3 steps. It was even harder to come down the 3 steps. And we left church at like 10:45 and to go teach a class because I used to teach on Sundays. And by the time I got to the gym, I was wearing jeans to church. I went to the bathroom to change, to put on my sweatpants to teach the class, and I couldn't get the jeans off. I said, there's no way I can put these pants.
Yeah, he came back out and he's still in jeans. And I was like, I can't
like, take them off.
Like, we're going to the hospital.
Right? And she's like, all right, we're going to the hospital.
And he's like, well, I got to teach this class first.
I'm like, well, I got to teach this class first because we got to deliver. I said, but, and then we'll go to the hospital. So she made arrangements for the kids, and we go to the hospital. And it's a holiday weekend. So they take me in. I tell them the symptoms. Obviously, it's very confusing because nothing added up, right? And they do an MRI. They do a brain scan. Nothing was coming up. Nothing. Blood work. It was great.
Like everything was like perfect. They're
right?
Like everything is fine.
Right. And like you're going to have to see a neurologist.
And by the way, if you've ever had any health scares or issues, whether it's with yourself or someone you love, there's nothing worse than being told, and we were told this for so long, we'll get to it, that they don't know what's wrong with you. Like that's probably the worst.
Right.
Like short of like you're dying next week, like that is probably the worst thing because it's so like it feels so agonizing because
right.
You're like, okay, but something's wrong. Like what's wrong? And they don't have answers. And it's like, I'm here for the answers and you can't give them to me. So it's a very weird feeling.
So
I'm sure obviously for you.
Right. So we are in the ER. It's a Sunday. We're in the ER for at least 6 hours. And they say,
as one does in an
they
ER.
say, you're going to have to see a neurologist. And I say, okay, great. They're like, but there's no neurologist until Tuesday because it's a holiday weekend. So you're going to have to stay. And I'm like, stay till Tuesday. Like, are you crazy? I got to teach tomorrow, right? I got to work tomorrow. Like, I can't stay here. And the kids are like, no, like, I'm not staying, right? I'm like, and then I did what hospitals hate that you do, which is I signed myself out.
They were not happy with
They
him.
were not happy.
They're like, you understand that if you leave, like, and anything happens to you, he's like, yep.
Yep, because I'm my own person. And I assume full responsibility for anything that I do, Yes. I still stand by.
Everybody just got a glimpse.
I still stand by that 100%. So we left the hospital and I'm like, listen, I'm sure that there is something pinched in my back. I am positive that I hurt myself. If I can go see a chiropractor, I'm sure that they can adjust me and I will be fine.
Bree's watching this and she's like making all these faces. I think she's hearing the full story for the first time.
So that night we go home. The next day I went to teach classes and it was just getting worse.
Well, don't skip. That night we went home and you were not well.
Right. I said I wasn't well.
Like when you sat down. I don't want to skip parts.
Right. Well, we got home, I sat down on the couch and it took both her and Bree to get me up and I went to bed that night.
Right, but he couldn't like physically push
I didn't have enough strength.
Off the couch.
And at this point I couldn't open a toothpaste cap. Like I obviously couldn't open a bottle of water at this point.
And at the time, neither Bree nor myself were as strong as we are now.
Right. No strength.
And I was like, maybe we had an ottoman. I'm like, maybe if you just throw yourself on the ottoman, we could roll. Like you're trying to figure it out because you're like, this is not a small man. Right. Right. And it's like.
And I thought I could crawl to the room. I thought I couldn't figure out where the problem was.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe if I get on the floor, I could just crawl to the room, but I didn't have enough strength to crawl either. So that was a problem.
But we got him in bed.
So they got me in bed.
And the next morning I went to Walgreens and I got you a walker.
She got me a walker. And now with the walker, I was mobile. It was like Superman.
You could walk around.
Pop, pop. I'm going everywhere. And then, so I go to teach.
That's not how it went.
So I go to teach. That's how I remember it. So I go to teach that day.
With his walker.
With my walker.
It took him like 20 minutes to get to the car.
Super impressive.
It was like.
Let me tell you something. I showed up to class that day.
To come cut the grass, huh?
I showed up to class that day and I'm like, I hope somebody tells me they don't feel good.
Or they're tired.
Or that they're tired. I'm over here in a walker. I've got
with no diagnosis.
I can't even hold myself up. And it was a holiday class because it was MLK Day. So it was one class and then back home. That night when we got back home that I sat on the couch, that was it.
There was no getting up.
It was dead weight. And there was no way for me to even help maneuver. So even both of them together couldn't get me to stand up. So I crashed on the couch that night. And then the next day, we made an appointment to go see the chiropractor. And I was like, this is going to be great. Because
I don't remember how you got off the couch that next day.
Well, you called my brother.
That's right.
So she called my brother. Nobody knew what was going on.
His brother is my size, so it was helpful.
But three people to help me get up with the walker. As long as I could get up, I could be in the walker. I could balance myself.
Yeah, but it was pushing yourself off and getting up.
Right, I couldn't do that. Yeah. So we go to a chiropractor. We go to see the guy that does the hurricanes and
the whole University of Miami team. He does all of their stuff, and we got an appointment there and went.
So I got I got an X-ray done.
You couldn't even get on that chiropractor table. Right. And they were like, "What the hell?"
I knew I had a few herniated discs. He's like, I can see the herniated disc, but this shouldn't be causing this. And he's like, I'm sure I can help you. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm sure you can too. She didn't think so.
I was like, he's a chiropractor. I'm sorry, but that's hardly a real doctor. I'm
that.
Just saying, like, not for somebody that's paralyzed. You're paralyzed over here. You can't even walk.
Anyway, so we go home and then we have to make the hard decision of going to the hospital. Because my thing is...
He said, come back tomorrow, I'm going to help you.
Right.
And you said, okay.
Right, because that's what I thought I was going to do.
And we went home, and you ended up on the couch again.
Right, and it was
And I was
worse.
like, here's a cup if you need to pee. Tomorrow, we're going to the hospital.
Right, and my thing was, I didn't want to stay overnight because I didn't want to cancel classes. I refused to cancel classes. I taught so many years with zero interruption.
He was so...
I taught during hurricanes. I taught in the rain. I taught in the heat. I taught in the dark.
You were so much more worried about canceling class than you were about what was happening with you. You're like,
100%.
This is interrupting the classes.
Which again, side note, and I didn't do this in the first podcast, that is the level of commitment that I had. And that is the level of commitment that is required to get to where you want to go. Yes, I was more concerned with my classes than with what I was feeling. Because as long as I could show up, we were good. Yeah. And I would show up in a walker. I would show up unbalanced. I would show up with zero strength, dehydrated, thirsty, hungry. I would show up because that's what you do. You show up.
That's what you think. Mic drop.
And then I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up to show up. This is like a rap battle. But it's,
You weren't clink, clink, clink anymore.
I wasn't like Superman, clank, 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 right? And then we made the decision that I was going to go to hospital, and like whatever.
I made the decision.
She made the decision that I was going to
He
go to
couldn't
the
open the
hospital.
toothpaste. He couldn't do anything.
And I was like, all right, I guess if I have to stay overnight, because to me, I was going for one day.
Then I had to call your brother again, and we had to get you in the car because we wanted him to go to a specific hospital.
And
if
if
we
called
called an ambulance, they
right.
weren't going to take him to the hospital that we wanted them to take him to because it was farther.
And if we called a private ambulance, honestly, that day, that time, we didn't have the money to pay for a private ambulance.
We didn't have a lot of options, so we're like,
all right, we'll figure out a way. And between
we just got to get him in the car because once we get him in the car,
they got me in
once
the car.
we park in the door, they'll take care of it from there.
Right, because the problem was that at that point, I couldn't actually help myself get in and out of the car.
You couldn't do any of it.
I couldn't do any of it.
Like really be. He
So-
was like dead weight. Like
So just to give you guys context, Sunday, hospital, check myself out. Monday, MLK Day.
Tuesday chiropractor.
Tuesday, chiropractor. Wednesday, hard talk. Thursday morning to the hospital.
Yeah.
So it's been just a few days. When I get to the hospital, the same nurses and the same attending ER doctor that were there Sunday were there in the morning Thursday. They're like, oh, so
You're back. You're going to stay this time?
Yep, I remember it. I said, I'll stay. So they called the neurologist. They ran a bunch of tests again. And they tell me that my blood markers were right on the cusp of Guillain-Barré, but it wasn't showing up that way.
Well, they did a spinal tap.
Did a spinal tap.
And in the spinal tap, he said that how it usually shows up for Guillain-Barré, like that result wasn't it, but it was close enough, and it was the closest thing that
it wasn't really red. It was like a
pink,
there
orange,
it was like a red with a pink hue,
salmon.
right? But good enough. We'll go with it.
So they said,
and for those of you who don't know what a spinal tap is, you want to describe it?
It's like an epidural, except instead of putting fluids in, they take the fluids out. So
Yep.
it's at the bottom of your spine.
Show up and do it.
Yeah.
Rock and roll.
I'm like, you're gonna be fine. I didn't even feel my epidural, and they're like, well, it's not really.
I was fine.
He was fine.
And then they start to freak out.
So they did ask really quick. They did ask, did you have a flu?
Yes.
And because.
And did I travel?
Did he travel? There are very few people in the world that have this. This is very rare. And so they still don't know what causes it.
Still.
And they still don't know really truly how to treat it.
Right.
And everyone has it's a vast like recovery
different versions
situation.
of it.
Some people recover fully, some people don't, some people go halfway, and I know we're going to go into all of it. But they said it seems like it's this.
Right.
It's Guillain-Barré syndrome,
Mhm.
right? Which what does it mean?
So basically, it's a demyelinating of your. So, like, take this. So imagine this coating here. Inside of this is a straw. Inside of that is your nerves, right? So the myelin is what covers your nerves. Mine was deteriorating, and so my brain couldn't send signals to my nerves for everything to respond.
Correct.
But it was autoimmune, so my body was doing it.
So your body's attacking basically
And
the
for those
coating of your nerves.
For those of you that are listening, I was using a straw, but imagine a cable,
right?
like
your phone charger,
the
right?
myelin,
It's got like
right? The myelin would be the plastic coating around it, and then your nerves would be the cables that are inside.
So your body's like attacking that. And so my first question was, okay, like, can you treat this? And they said yes. And then I asked, can this happen again? Because now I'm afraid, like, you can't catch a cold now, like for the rest of your life, right? Because it's like Bree at the time used to always have colds. So it's like in my mind, I'm like, can he never get a cold? They're like, no, that's not how it works, right? Like
you get it once.
You get it once and you never get it again. And I'm
Right.
like, okay, so then we just got to get through this. Right?
So they rush me to ICU.
Why?
Because the problem is that at that point, the way it escalates is it could, because it's muscular or at the
nervous system.
Because it's your nervous system, then everything can start to go. The same way I lost strength, everything can start to lose strength.
So if your brain stops sending signals to your nerves, it stops
Right.
sending signals to all of your other organs.
So if they had to intubate me, I had to, they had to have me in ICU to be ready for that.
In case your lungs start to go or any other.
Right. And a
organ.
lot of people that would Guillain-Barré get intubated. Never got to that.
But they immediately put you in ICU. How are you feeling at this point?
Like worse than ever.
Like physically, you can't move. But mentally, what are you thinking?
I can't believe I have to cancel class.
Were you like ever, and it's interesting because like obviously we both experienced that together, but very differently because it was happening to him. And I was on the outside doing everything that I could and dealing with the kids and whatever, and with helping in any way and getting answers and whatever. But obviously it was happening to your body, right? So it's like, where are you mentally in this moment?
So I was the weakest I had been Thursday. Physically. Like, at least before I could move my hands, and at this point I couldn't even lift them anymore. Like, anything. I was done. Like, I couldn't come up, I couldn't lift my hand. And again, they had to have me in ICU because, I could choke. There were a series of potential risks at that point. But nothing, I couldn't do anything. And then that was Thursday. Friday, when she came to see me. But
wait, really quick, before you go into that. So Thursday he went into that, and I couldn't stay with him because A, it's ICU, and B, we had 2 kids.
Right.
And so I had to go home to deal with the kids and take Bree to school and do all the things. And that was really hard.
I'm sure.
Like, even for you, like, right. I didn't want you to be there alone.
Right.
But it's like, that was hard because like we literally had a 6-month-old baby. Like, I'm trying to like pump milk in the ICU. Like, you still have to continue life. Like, maybe we can't teach classes, but things continue. But you're in the ICU, you can't move.
Right. Can't move, can't do anything.
I can't be there for...
And I'm a grown-ass man.
I can't be there for a long period of... Right.
Like, nothing. Like,
very
can't go to
humbling.
the bathroom. Like,
very
I can't
humbling.
do anything.
Yeah.
So
then I went home to deal with the kids, came back the next morning.
So when she comes back the next morning, like, I developed a little bit of palsy. So my face dropped.
Half of the face.
Half of my face dropped. I was like,
I wasn't aware of, I couldn't call him. He couldn't text. Like, he couldn't do anything. I
didn't know.
Couldn't get a hold of him, right? It's not like he's in the bed texting.
But it just shows you that, like, at that level, like, all the nerves go, right?
And I walked in and I was like, what happened to your face?
I was like, what happened to it?
What happened to it? Because he's like, hey, you know how like you see someone, you're like, hey, but it was like only one side, like, hey. And I was like, oh no, is it going to stay like that? We can't have that. No, that's not what I was thinking, but now that makes sense. But anyway, I was like, oh my God, like, is he okay? Like, did he have a stroke? Like, did something happen to him? Like, I wasn't sure.
And when she arrived, everybody was in the room. There were 2 doctors, neurologists, the nurses, everybody.
They were going to do a nerve conductor test.
Not yet. No? But they were just like seeing how I was doing overnight. Remember, I checked in Thursday. So they were like trying to see how that first night went. And they were still not medicating me because we were still waiting for a real diagnosis. So I was like, yeah, I mean, like, I'm not good, but, I'm sure I'll be home by Monday, right? Back to work. And they were like, the one doctor tapped me on the leg, said, you're never going to be the same again. You're not leaving here this weekend. You're not leaving for a while.
It's going to be a long time.
It's going to be a long time. And I was so pissed. So you don't know me.
You don't know what I'm made of.
I'm like, I'm leaving Monday.
And to be honest with you guys, like, not like, because it's not dramatic, it's reality, right? It's like he was the only one that was working at the time. So our gym and our business fully depended on him. We've never had any family around to take care of the kids. So obviously in this moment, everybody, like, your mom flew in and your brothers, and my mom was available, but everyone also has a life. So it's like everyone was really only going to be around for a short period of time. It's one of those like, hey, I'm around for the next week or 2, but so it was like we had kids that needed to be tended to. Like, Bree wasn't grown like she is now. We had a business that needed to be tended to. We were not in the best financial situation. Like, we were fine, but we weren't like, you're going to be out of work for months and I don't work and all these things are all these medical bills are going to pile up fine, right? So it was a very stressful time. Like, we had just moved. We had just gotten through the holidays. Right. And we were definitely in a very, like, when they said that, I know that for you, when he said, like, you're never going to be the same again, you're like, fuck you. Like, hell yeah, I am, right? But for you, it was more like, what do you mean this is going to take a long time, right? Because to me, it's like, you don't even know what's happening. How's this going to take a long time? Like, what's happening? I'm so confused. Someone tell me something.
Right. Nobody had an answer.
Nobody had like
Nobody actually had a real answer.
But everyone had negative things to say.
All negative.
It's almost like, it's almost like they want to save you from any like potential disappointment, or like they want to make sure that they cover their ass liability wise and don't give you false hope. Like, I don't know, but it was not positive or pretty.
And I'm sure if you spit some of that to somebody else, like, it's not going to make them recover faster or better.
It's going to mess with them mentally.
Right. Like, there's no need for any of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that particular day, I also got a nerve conductor test. And the lady that came to do it, like, butchered me. And if you don't know what a nerve conductor test is, so they shoot electricity through the nerves to see what kind of response, and they're reading how fast you can feel that response.
So they shock you.
And while I was paralyzed, I could still feel it, right? Because they're shocking me. And I was like going through it.
It was like CIA stuff.
I was
they're shocking you, like,
yeah,
oh.
like holy shit.
For like an hour and a half. It took forever.
She couldn't get it. She couldn't read it. It was terrible.
I was like, someone get this old bitch out of here. We need somebody who knows what they're doing. I was angry.
So after that, they diagnosed it as Guillain-Barré for sure. They start me on IVIG.
Which is?
Like
what? Like how does it work? Like it's an IV medication.
It's an IV. It's basically an extract of blood, and they start to it's like immunoglobulin.
Yeah, but basically it was just like an IV in your vein.
It was an intravenous medication to help my body start reproducing the cells that my body was killing, and basically like start from the beginning, right? Like let's put healthy cells in so that your body could start reproducing.
And that was still in ICU, and that was supposed to happen for an entire week. Every day? Or was it every other day? No, it was every day.
It was every day.
Yeah.
And then after one treatment, I was already better. I could lift my hands. I was able to pick up a cup,
you were
bring
able
the
to
straw
brush
to
your
my
teeth.
mouth. I wonder if that's why I still do that.
You were able to brush your teeth in the bed, but you were able to like do it by yourself. You were able to feed yourself.
Yeah, my lungs never lost any strength because they would test me twice a day. But I couldn't move yet. I could grip the cup. I could bring it to my mouth. I was able to feed myself, but that was it. And then they said, you're going to have to check into a physical therapy hospital where you will start your...
Well, they said you're going to have to do physical therapy. And he's like, that's fine. Like,
right.
because that's what you did for a living
I'm like,
back in the day.
No problem.
He's
They're like, no.
You're going to have to go. Like,
you're going to have to
inpatient for at least a couple of months.
I was like, months? That's the only time that I was like devastated.
Yep. That was the only time. Like, literally, I can tell you because I would bring food or we would talk or I would, help him write the emails and I would...
And I was hurt because I had to dictate the email saying that I wasn't going to be back on Monday and that it was going to be a while and that I didn't know how long.
And that whole time, like, even though he wasn't feeling good and even though we didn't know what was happening, he was always like, it's fine. Like, everything's okay. Like, I'm going to be fine. Like, he always seemed very positive and very unfazed. He was always making jokes and he was never like, I'm going to be fine. Like, these people don't know what they're talking about, right? It's like, he was calming me down. He was calming my anxiety. But that, and I'll tell you, like, inside that whole process, which you're going to continue to unfold, but that was the only time that he seemed like that he was not good. Like, that was the time where it like really hurt him. And I think in the 11 and a half years that I've been with you, that still is the only time that I can say that you were like really devastated and to really hurt.
And to be honest, I was more upset because the concept behind it, like I understood what they said I had to do. It just didn't require imprisoning me. Right? Which is, sure, you're going to have to go through physical therapy. They were like, you're going to have to do 90 minutes of physical therapy every day. I'm like, great. So I'm going to work out for 90 minutes. And then you have to do 90 minutes of occupational therapy. I'm like, great. So I'm going to have to work out twice a day. Why did I have to stay in the hospital for that?
Yeah.
Without being able to leave.
They have to collect.
Like,
but here's
that's what really,
and we're talking about, obviously, this is all the details of what happened to you, but overall as a life story is very condensed version of it because there's so much happening at all times, right? You're dealing with insurance, you're dealing with business, you're dealing with family members.
Junior's breastfeeding, Bree's still in school, she's in a volleyball team.
Right.
She had games to go to.
Your bills are piling up. Your family members that have all their opinions that they want to throw your way.
There's a million other things.
A million things are happening, including your mom having breast cancer.
My mom had breast cancer at the time.
At the same time.
So all of these things are happening.
Life was lifing, let me tell you.
Right? All of that was happening at the same time.
Yeah.
But we have to keep moving forward because if you're still here, you keep moving forward. Every day is an opportunity.
Every day above ground's a great day.
And so they tell me that they're going to transport me to another hospital where I'm going to do physical therapy.
Which I was happy about because ICU is like the worst place to come.
And occupational therapy every day, twice a day. And I'm like, well, how long am I going to be in there? No one knew. No one had a real answer.
They said at least.
Because there weren't even conditions.
They said at least 2 months.
At least 2 months.
Because you were like, you can move your arm.
Let me tell you something.
But you couldn't walk.
Right. I'd never taken a day off.
He had it, and mind you, this whole time, how how much weight had you lost just in that week in
So
ICU?
the first week in ICU, I lost 30 pounds. And obviously all muscle, because, you know.
When you use it, you lose it.
You
And mind you, you're getting IVIG for your Guillain-Barré, but you're also getting daily shots because you can't move, right? So your skin doesn't start to rot or whatever it is that happens when you're
stick to the
what?
Like it sticks to the
Yeah, it sticks to the bed. They
yeah.
have to move you around. Everybody has to you stick to the bed. It becomes like you have to move. You know,
people, you have to move.
Have to move.
You
like
have to move.
People have to shower you. People have to help you go to the bathroom. People have to help feed
That's an
you.
interesting experience.
People, you needed help with food, right? With cutting food, maybe even if you could bring it to your mouth. So we went to rehab, still in that situation where it was like you couldn't walk, you hadn't taken a step, you hadn't stood up, like you hadn't even really sat outside of your bed. It's not like they moved him from the bed into this like corner chair in the hospital room. Like you had only been in a hospital bed this entire time.
And the first, like, we got to the rehab hospital and they sent me to physical therapy right away. Like I checked in. It's not like a hotel check-in. Like checked in and I was in PT like immediately, which honestly I was glad to do because I've been in bed this whole time.
Yeah, and I think like it was interesting because in ICU, you look around and like everyone's fucked up, right? Like they're dying, they're like intubated, everyone's crying, like it's crazy. Even though luckily that wasn't our case, we were there for prevention. But then you go into the neurology floor of a rehab place and it felt just as bad. And I was like, okay, this is great. Like at least we're getting out of this death ward over here, you know? But it was like, there was a guy there that had half a head, like literally like half a skull. There was a lady there. I remember like sometimes you were in PT and they would bring her baby. Like she was young, like easily in her 20s or 30s. And she like had a dead stare. Like she had no consciousness. Like who knows if she got into a car accident or what happened to those
There's
people.
levels, people.
There's levels inside of
levels
whatever anyone's going through. There's always, it's what they say, right? If you put your problems in a pile with other people's, you probably pick yours back up. So it was definitely an interesting experience, but you went straight into your stuff.
Right into physical therapy. And the nurses that were working with me, like they expected me to stand up and I was trying as hard as I could.
How does that feel physically to not be able to stand up?
I think that we all take for granted how much the brain runs us on autopilot because none of you think about breathing, right? None of you think about your heart beating. Like you're not in your thoughts saying heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat.
Or
like,
hand, pick up that fork, put it in my mouth.
Like everything is automatic. So it was a lot of effort. Like that first time, like I was in between two bars. If you haven't seen the video, I was in between two bars and you've got, you know, the nurse's aide and you have the nurse and they were like, you know, we're going to help you stand up, you know, grab onto these two bars. One's going to push me up and the other one's going to pull me by
your belt,
by my belt.
And you're holding onto the rails.
Right. And I hadn't stood up in 2 weeks at this point.
Yeah.
And this was going to be the first attempt. And I was like, we're fucking doing this on one. So I'm grabbing on and I'm like, we got to get this. You got to
rock back and forth. We got to
get this one, right? Two. And then boom. And I stood up and I was like, you know, finally back up. Yeah. And it felt like what it felt like when I was in the walker, like weeks ago when I was walking myself. It's like, boom, boom, boom,
I love that video because you can see in your face that you were surprised and you could hear it.
I was like, oh shit.
I went like, because I was recording it, right? So you could see that too. And I was like, that was quite the moment. It's like, okay, you can stand. Like, we've made progress.
And then it was, all right, so I got 2 workouts a day, 90 minutes each. What do we got to do? Like every day. And you wake up and somebody comes to get you and I would drop and I would wheel myself through the hallways and you would see all the people that skipped out on PT that day or skipped out on OT that day. Like, no, not today.
They loved you.
And I'm like, not today. Are you crazy? Like, how are we going to get out of here? Like, I'm dying to get out of here.
I know. Those nurses would always be like, you're so willing.
And if physical therapy was the way, then shit, 3-4 times a day. If I could, because I would get really tired.
Yeah.
But I was game for all of it. And I think that becomes another thing. Like, when you're in a situation where there is a process, right? You've got to be all in. And imagine, like, I physically cannot stand. There is no, if you stand up 8 times a day, you'll be out of here in 80. Like, there was nothing.
There was
you just got to do it, right?
You just got to do it.
And that's like every other journey,
like
right?
Blindly.
Especially in fitness. It's like you go to the gym day one, nothing happens. you eat your food, even if you ate perfect today, nothing is going to happen. And nothing is happening tomorrow either. You've got to do it every day, over and over and over.
With seeing nothing.
With seeing nothing. And then at some point, it starts to happen, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully, like in my case, you are under the supervision of people that know how much further you have to push, how to push you. And that's what was happening. Like I had to learn how to pick up marbles with my fingers, right? Because I couldn't actually hold a fork. I could grab it and
you could grip it, but not
grip it and I can
caveman
kind of like,
style.
But I had to learn how to pick up marbles, because I couldn't even connect my fingers. Like doing this
that was an
difficult,
activity, yeah.
right? Like doing this was a thing that I had to do. There were so many like little things,
yeah,
including like standing up was one, walking was another, right?
Oh my
like
God.
flexing and extending my knee, stepping heel to toe, like putting pressure side to side. Like my body had lost all sensation.
Yeah, and really quick to your point before, like a lot of times in situations in life, with every situation, the only way out is through, right? And it's like if you don't go through what you need to go through, like
Right.
there is no, I'm gonna get to the other side of this. Like
Right.
you
There's
have
no way around
to.
it.
There's no way around
And
it.
that becomes the thing. Like there was no way around it for me because I needed to get out. It wasn't like I hoped to get out. Like, no, I am getting out of this.
So through is how I'm going.
And whatever. And again, they said it wouldn't be the same, but they did say that I was going to recover. They didn't know how much. And I'm like, that's all I need. Because
Right.
the thing is, like, at a basic level, I do have an understanding of how the human body works. And your cells regenerate and lean muscle tissue regenerates. And as long as I progressed, then there was a lifetime of opportunity
Yeah.
to keep getting better. And that's one of the hiccups that everybody has. Everybody wants everything quick, right? You want to lose weight quick. And I'm like, what happens when you lose the weight? How do you keep it off if you don't
Yeah.
have a plan in place?
Yeah.
Right? So it all became about progression. So if I could stand up today, can I stand up twice tomorrow? Right? Can I stand up 3 times the next day? Can I take 2 steps? Can I take 3 steps? Can I take 4 steps? Can I walk down the hallway? Everything became about progressing.
Yes.
Can I pick up these marbles faster?
Mhm.
Can I pedal more on the bike? Like everything became about a progression.
But you weren't sitting there being like, I just want to walk already. I just want to go back to work. I just like you wanted to, but that's not what you can focus
And
on.
here's the thing.
Today you have 10 more marbles to pick up.
And again, back to it's not like I wasn't trying.
Right.
It's not like if you work out as hard as you can and you eat your food perfect, it's not like you're not trying, but it's going to happen on your body's time, not on your time.
Yes.
Right? Yes, I wanted to do it, but my body just wasn't doing it.
I'm sure that you wanted life to get back to normal immediately.
I remember like 2 or 3 weeks in, they were like, all right, so we're going to use dumbbells today, because before that I couldn't even pick, and they gave me a 2. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody take a picture, right? Because I was curling like a 2-pound dumbbell, and it was difficult, but it was part of the process. And then I think after a month that I was getting better, right. Inside of the parameters.
Yeah, you still never walked from your room to the PT room like
and
by yourself.
Month, a million things happened, but as I was getting better, then I could start asking, it's like, okay, how much longer am I going to be here? Like, what are the parameters? Like, are you guys going to let me go once I'm healed? Like,
it's going to let me go.
Right. Like, what are the parameters? Sometimes they wouldn't let me go outside.
Yeah, I had to be like, can I take him outside? Like, I had to wheel him. But it's like,
what needs to happen for me to go home?
Like sunlight.
Right. And they were like, well, you need to be able to get in and out of your wheelchair
by yourself
from the floor. And basically it was mimicking you falling at home by yourself. Mm-hmm. Could you get yourself back in the wheelchair if you were alone? Mm-hmm. And I needed to be able to walk a certain amount of steps, because obviously the other things were progressing. They would watch me eat. I could go to the bathroom by myself. So I needed to be able to show progression in my gait and my steps. And I needed to, the most important thing was to be able to get in and out of the wheelchair.
If you fell.
So that was the benchmark.
That was the goal.
But here becomes the thing. Now I have a benchmark, right? Now I know this is what I got to do. So I work toward that every day.
Yeah. And
with tons of hesitation, they were like, they're like, it's going to take a while. I'm like, it is not going to take a while. Because I'm going to work on this every day. And sure enough, it happened inside of 2 weeks, and they did not want to let me go. He was like, you should be here longer. I'm like, I'm good. Like,
yeah.
Because if the recovery is going to take a while, like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Because once I do
I'm going to have to keep
therapy,
recovering at home.
right. Once I did physical therapy and occupational therapy, it's like the rest of the day I'm like lingering in a room.
Sitting in a hospital bed,
Right?
eating hospital food, watching Family Feud.
Right.
So it was...
And in your thoughts. And so it's important to make sure that you are good with yourself so that you are having a good conversation internally.
Because that whole situation could have turned out different if you were mentally in a different place.
There's a lot of alone time, you know.
Even though I spent the entire day there with the kids.
Right.
Still alone.
But you would come like mid-morning and then have to leave mid-afternoon to get Bree, and then they would all come back, you know, mid-afternoon. So
we would camp out at the hospital all day. But yeah, I would drop Bree off at school.
Until the last visit. Go
to the hospital, go pick up with Junior, go pick up Bree from school, go back to the hospital, and then stay there until after dinner, which is when you had to leave, right? I don't know if it was 8 or 9 o'clock, and then you're by yourself at least 12 hours.
Right. And then the other condition, just to speed up the story, the other condition is that our apartment had to be handicap friendly, right? You need to have wheelchair access. I need to have the shower thing. Right.
So they let us go on, what was it? Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And we went home with fully handicapped everything. So the wheelchair, the board that gets you from the wheelchair into the bed and vice versa, the toilet thing, the shower thing where you sit in the shower, the walker, everything. We went home fully.
Because I was better, but I wasn't like...
You weren't like normal.
Right.
I
still needed a lot of help.
Yeah. So we went home.
Excited. And a couple days go by. 2 weeks, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so too.
2 weeks go by, and I wake up one morning and my hand is numb again. And then this time I said it to her right away. I said, I'm feeling it again. She's like, we're not going to wait.
I said, it's impossible because he said it can't happen again. But if you're feeling something, like, we cannot wait. We have to go back in.
Right back to the hospital. Same hospital. We go in. The same neurologist that diagnosed me was there. Ran tests again. And he says, okay, so we're going to try a different procedure. So instead of doing the IVIG, which is the intravenous, they are going to do plasmapheresis. And plasmapheresis is almost like a dialysis where they, you know, take out a certain amount of blood, they put it through a machine, they clean it, and then they reintroduce it, to put it in simple terms.
And they do that through?
So they put a catheter through
that neck vein right here.
And then they sent me off to a room. It wasn't ICU.
No, it was a regular room.
It was a regular room. And then every other night, somebody would come, and they would come in the middle of the night for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
They would come in the middle of the night to do this plasmapheresis, and they would do like 2 or 3 liters at a time.
Well, they did it during the day too, because I was there for some of them.
I think one of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then when they did the plasmapheresis, I felt better.
Almost immediately. Yeah.
And I felt just as good as I did when I left the physical therapy hospital. And the goal was only to be there for a week. That's what they had said. It's only going to be here for, I think, 4 sessions of plasmapheresis. And then I was going to be able to go back home. I didn't have to go through rehab again or anything, especially how fast I was recovering.
Yeah.
Like,
and you did physical therapy there too, right?
I did PT while I was there, but I was recovering, I guess, back to where I was when they initially sent me home, which was a good sign.
Wasn't it 2 weeks though that stay? Because it was a week of plasmapheresis every other day. So I thought it was 2 weeks in the hospital.
It could have been.
Okay.
It could have been. I remember when I was gonna go home was a Monday. And I remember it was a Monday because I watch wrestling on Mondays, and
Monday Night Raw.
And I was excited to go home and watch Monday Night Raw, right? So everything is good. Doctor's gonna sign me out. No problem.
We're excited.
We're going home. We're thinking about what we're going to pick up to eat. And all that's missing is that they got to take out the catheter. So they put a call in because you got to get another doctor to come in. And they're like, he'll be right up. And then we'll sign you out and you can go home. I'm like, great. No problem. I'm feeling better. Everything is great. And then doctor comes. He's like, just, lean over. I'm like this. I'm joking.
That catheter was coming out of like here.
Right, it was coming out of here. I'm like, is it gonna hurt? He's like, you won't even feel it. It's like, great. Was not true because I could feel it I could feel it dangling. So he pulls it out, and I'm like, no problem. And then she's making a face, right? Like all of you have seen in all of our episodes.
I make face.
She has a lot of facial expressions, and she's over there making a face, and I'm like, what? She's like, you gotta see this.
You have to see it. Like, you're not gonna believe this was inside your neck.
Right? And I turn over, and it was yo big, right? It was
fucking huge. I'm like, where was that? Like, down to his toe? Like, what is happening? Why is that thing so fucking big? I'm like, because you see, like, you only see this part out, right? So
which was weird, because I had a thing hanging out of my neck all the time.
All the time it was hanging out.
I had to keep Junior away from it because he wanted to pull it.
to yank it. But it's like, it was like just a little piece hanging out. I thought it was like, okay, like a little bit. It was massive. And I was like, you're not going to believe this whole thing was inside your chest?
And honestly, nothing ever phases me.
Ever.
Like,
I'm surprised I didn't faint.
I could see just about whatever, and it just doesn't bother me.
It bothers me.
And all of a sudden, I start to feel like my sugar's dropping, and I start to feel faint. And I'm like gasping for air, and I'm like, something's happening, right? And then I guess I got really pale, and then she made a noise, and then all the nurses freaked out.
I was like, he's not okay. He's not okay.
And I'm like,
and then they kicked me out of the room.
They kicked her out of the room. And they're calling like emergency room SWAT. They're ready to cut my chest open.
Running there.
Everybody's running. It's like,
I'm like, what's happening with him? They're like,
crazy.
Man, you need to stay outside. I'm like,
right. It's crazy. Everyone's yelling, right? And I'm trying to talk. I'm like, I just need something to drink. And then the attending physician was like, everybody just stop. And she looks at me. She's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I just need something to drink, right? It's not the first time I feel faint in my life. Like, I've worked out really hard in the heat and felt faint. I just needed like some orange juice, and I got some orange juice and I was good. And she said, everybody just chill out.
She was good.
She was great. And then I was like, what happened? She's like, it's called a vasovagal reaction, right? It's like, it usually happens to guys when they see their
Babies
spouse being born, like something that's super impressionable,
which you've already seen,
right? Like that's so weird. Like I don't know, but it did it. And
sorry.
And then they said, now we're gonna have to keep you overnight for observation. I was like,
we're coming home, and they were like, we're not coming home, or he's not coming home.
So
you had to stay another night.
They're like, but first thing in the morning, we'll let you go. We just got to keep you overnight.
For observation.
And I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna fight. So whatever. So that was the time. Oh, my blood pressure was high.
Yeah.
Right.
You were stressed.
Well, my blood pressure was high, so they gave me medication for my blood pressure.
Mind you, there's one little snippet we didn't talk about in there.
Oh.
Your neighbor in the other room one night.
Oh, well, no.
That was there.
I know, but we're getting to that. We're getting to that. So they give me blood pressure medication, and I didn't have high blood pressure. My blood pressure was high situationally. I was going through all this shit, right? So they give me blood pressure medication, and they're like, you got to take this. And I'm trying to be a good,
patient.
I'm trying to be a good patient, because the other thing was this. When I left the hospital the first time, I went home, and I'm trying to do a little bit more every day. I got dumbbells, I'm pressing, I'm curling. Every day I would try to take 10 more steps. And when I landed back in, they said, you overdid it. They said, you did too much and you put yourself back here. So then when I left, I'm like, I'm not going to do shit. I'm not going to do anything, right? I'm just going to let this run its course. So, and you give me the meds, I'm going to take them, right? So they give me the blood pressure medication. The very next morning I take it. We're going to take Bree to school. And on the way to take Bree to school, I started to feel like I'm going to pass out again.
He was pale.
I was like, I feel like I'm literally going to pass out here. I'm holding on for dear life to the handle in the car. So we drop off Bree, and she rushes me back to the hospital. It was literally the next day. And they put me in a room, and they're checking on my thing, and I tell them what happened. And they're like, everything seems fine. They're like, you probably didn't need blood pressure medication. I'm like, no shit. I just need to go home.
I needed to not be stressed.
I just needed to not be here.
But they want to medicate you for everything.
So they're like, we're going to have to keep you overnight for observation. I'm like, you got it. So they checked me in. Luckily, again, everything was fine. They put me in. Again, I'm still paralyzed, right? Like I'm downplaying
my paralysis because I still couldn't get up.
Right. Going home just meant you're using the wheelchair and the walker.
Right, but I still couldn't.
You're fully handicapped.
Right, I'm still fully handicapped.
Which we weren't sure at this point if you were ever not going to be.
Right.
Like, this was the progress, right?
Right,
It's like,
this was the new normal.
Right, it's like, am I going to have to lug out a wheelchair every time we go to the grocery store? Are you going to need to go to the bathroom this way and shower this way? We didn't know.
So they put me in a really nice room, right? It was a much bigger room, like everybody fit. We
were all there hanging out. Me and the kids.
And then, so it's getting late. They're going to, they have to go home because they can't sleep there. And all of a sudden there is commotion on that floor of the hospital. And one of the nurses runs to our room to, no, not yet. I see the cops running that way. Mm-hmm. And I could see things flying. And one of the nurses comes to close the door and they're like, stay in here. And I'm like, of course, I'm like in bed like this.
Where am I going, bitch?
Where am I going? And I tell them to run into go hide in the bathroom because I don't know what's happening, right? So they got to go hide in the bathroom.
I took the kids and I went
She
in the
took
bathroom.
the kids in the bathroom. I'm like laying in the bed. I'm like, all right, well, this is the way it's going to go. Like, this is it.
Imagine some actual shit is going down and you can't physically
So
move.
apparently they had somebody that was either had OD'd or had taken a lot of, I guess, Flocka at the time, and he had broken the handcuffs. That he was handcuffed to the bed, and he had yanked it off, and he was attacking
all the nurses.
And he was attacking the nurses. Like, it was a mess. So,
and you couldn't defend yourself
and
or
I
us.
couldn't do shit, right? So I'm like,
fun times.
And they had to leave because visiting hours were over, and now I got to stay. I'm like, oh,
fun times.
Fun times. Anyway, so the next day they let me go. I go home, and 2 weeks later, I start to feel it again. The tingling is back. And now we're
at
like...
At this point, this is starting to feel like a nightmare.
Right? And I'm like, they said it wasn't going to happen again. And I'm like, not tingling. Like, no, like I am weak
now
again.
You know the
like
feeling.
I can't get up again. And we called the neurologist that had been attending. And he's like, this doesn't normally happen like this.
He's like, I'm sorry. Because I spoke to him. He's like, I'm sorry. I can't really help you anymore. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because mind you, this is the guy that was at the very first hospital. And when we got out of the hospital, this is the guy that we went to his office. This is the guy that was this was our guy. He was overseeing everything that was happening. And he's like, I can't really help you anymore. This is as far as I can take it. Clearly, this goes beyond what I know what to do. You guys are going to have to go find someone else. And I'm like, I felt like, what the fuck? I mean, if I was the person I am today, I probably would have been angry, but also okay, we're being redirected, right? It's there's clearly somebody else, but at the time I was like, what is happening? Not even the doctor wants to help us,
right? We put, and that becomes the thing, you put all your trust into the doctor because the doctor's supposed to know best, right? But everybody can only work inside of what they're capable of working.
And at least he was honest, but then he did say, go to this hospital.
Right. He redirected us to a university hospital where there were more neurologists.
Yeah. He's like, there's so many of them there. Somebody's got to be able to help you.
Right. And it's all right, now we go back to this hospital. And again, you go to one of these university hospitals, they're usually not in great areas. They're usually not in great areas. Yeah. And there's a lot of people there. So the service, I guess, there's a lot of people in the ER. They're not going to attend you that fast. Not the experience
we were used to having.
Right.
In the last 2 times that we went to the same hospital.
So I go back, they got all my records, and they're like, all right, so we're gonna admit you. We were in the ER for 12 hours. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna admit you. They're like, the only problem is that there's no there's no private room. So
because the hospital we liked going to, which is the one we went to the first 2 times, they call it a resort, right? It's still a hospital, but it's it was a nice hospital. You always had your own room. This was not
right.
That.
They're like, you're gonna have to share a room. And whatever, I don't care. At this point, I just want to get better or an answer, right? Because I'm like, why is this happening again?
But everything we did with the kids. So that 12 hours in the ER
was with the kids.
Everything other than the first 2 weeks that you were sick, which was that ICU week and the week after. Everything else we did with them because there was nobody to leave them with, and I wasn't going to leave you by yourself.
So they check me in, and they're starting tomorrow, check me in late at night. And starting the next day, they were going to start running tests. And then did the person I was sharing a room come after, or was he already there?
No, he was already there.
He was already there.
Yeah.
All right. Was he handcuffed to the bed?
Yes.
Yeah. So the person that I was sharing the room with was handcuffed to the bed.
And complaining about Junior because...
Right. Even though he was handcuffed to the bed, he was
Junior
complaining
was
about
crying,
Junior.
And I'm like, well, And then they were like, ma'am, you're gonna have to go somewhere else with the baby. It was a fucking nightmare.
Right. But then they start testing me for everything, which I guess in retrospect was great.
Yeah.
They ran tests for cancer, for HIV, for
everything, every organ in
kinds
your
of
body.
They put all kinds of liquids in me, ran all kinds of tests. I saw 4 different neurologists. All of them tested me for something different.
Nerve conductor.
Well, then the head neurologist, which was one of the leading experts in one of them in Guillain-Barré, was the last one to see me, and he said it looks like Guillain-Barré, but I'm gonna have to let me see the nerve conductor results that they ran at the other hospital. They couldn't find them. The lady had butchered me, and she didn't even submit.
Yeah, it was nowhere to be found. So
he's like, we're gonna have to do the nerve conductor test again, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding, because it was super painful, right? But then he came and did it, and it was like nothing, and it took all of 30 minutes, and like I felt it, but nothing compared to what she did.
Stupid lady.
So he says, so what you have is called CIDP. It's chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. It is just like Guillain-Barré, but is a chronic version where it keeps showing up.
So I'm like, hold on. English. I'm like, so it's Guillain-Barré, but it's not Guillain-Barré. And this is what he said, because how I remember. He said, it's like the cousin, right? It's like the cousin of Guillain-Barré, where he's gonna have, it's even more rare, and he's gonna have this forever. It's a chronic version, meaning like it doesn't happen once, it's going to keep happening.
Right.
And he spit that out, and I think this is an important point, with so much certainty and no hesitation. Like, he was sure of it.
Right.
And in that moment, I realized the difference between someone that's exceptional at what they do and someone that's maybe good or great, right? Or average. Because nobody knew shit. And this guy did whatever, and he's like, yep, this is what you have, this is how it works, this is, and I'm like, all of these months, and no one else could fucking say that?
Right.
But it's like, no, because he was the shit, right? So it's like, when you're the shit at what you do, like, it's different. It just is different. And it's so important to have the right person handling whatever area of your life that you need handling, right?
Right.
Whether it's the person handling your finances or your health and fitness or your lawyer, insert thing. It's so important to have the right person doing it, because it made all the difference in the world. Of course, everything happens the way that it's supposed to, and everything happens for a reason. But had we landed it with him in the very beginning, things probably would have turned out very different.
Possibly. But I think that
at least answers wise.
I think everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, because you don't know that you have something chronic until it's happening a bunch of times.
Totally.
They could have diagnosed it the same way the first time, because until it's happened again and again,
right,
it can't be chronic, right? So, and the way it shows up the same way. So after that, we left, and there was another doctor at that was the leading researcher in the country on Guillain-Barré, and there was a year wait to get an appointment with him. A year, and she got on the phone, and
that was the most, I think, of what I did inside of that whole time. It's like I was just on the phone with doctors, with insurance, with this, with that, and trying to get this in and trying to get that in. The business side of things, like the scheduling.
Right.
I was like, you're gonna have to see me. Like, there's no way I can wait a year. Like, I'm like
and
begging on the phone.
And like, again, in between that, guys, like every time I would go home from the hospital, I would go right back to work. I would show up at the gym. I would teach classes in a wheelchair. I would go to my private training sessions in a wheelchair. She would take me to my session. She would get the wheelchair out of the truck or the car, and like would help me out. I would roll myself to my session, and then I would do my session in a wheelchair, and then I would go back to the car, and she would help me back in the car, put the wheelchair in the truck, and we did that every day, weeks on end, because
months.
Well, because nothing stops, right? Like, we had to get right back to it. Anytime you have a setback, it doesn't mean that it's over. You just got to keep going. So that's how we found a way to keep going. And as if I got a little bit better, that I could use a walker to go to my session, I would just use a walker. If I couldn't walk that day, then I would be in the wheelchair. But no classes were canceled, no workouts were not delivered, no emails were not sent. Nothing stopped just because this was happening to me. Because I had a commitment to make sure that I was going to show up for everybody else.
And inside of that, life was chaotic. Life felt like it was falling apart. Financially, we were in the worst place that we could possibly imagine. Things were falling apart, but you keep going.
You keep going.
Nothing, no health problem, no financial problem, no how are we going to pay this, or
Nothing mattered.
Nothing mattered. It's like you keep showing up for the thing.
You
like
keep
you keep showing
up.
up.
You keep moving forward.
You don't
So
fail if you don't quit.
so she kept calling, harassing, and we got an appointment. There was an opening to go
I'm
see.
like, if someone cancels, if something changes, if he wants to take 30 minutes for lunch instead of an hour,
Right.
like if there's any way that I can get in there, like
Dr. Sharma.
Yeah, I need to
So-
get in there. I need to. I don't think you understand. And she's like, I understand. Like you don't. And it's like, but I'm sure everyone says the same thing.
Of course, if he's a leading researcher on this, I'm sure everybody is going through the same thing or similar.
Mm-hmm.
So an appointment opened up, and we go, and if the guy at the hospital was exceptional, right? He honestly like was so calm. Like he's like, oh,
It was weird.
and I think that like he was entertained by like when you're passionate about something and this is what you do, here's another experiment.
Right. He was the leading researcher for
Like,
that. And
nobody-
here was finally one in how many? 1 in a million.
Right. Like
with this thing that you're
no
studying.
one had it like I had it. So he had a million questions, you know, like what have you done? You know, I'm telling him the story. He's like, okay, like he was like, okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So he gave me a prescription for IVIG, and I would get IVIG once a month. At the hospital, the first week it was every day, and he gave me a prescription to do it once a month. So once a month I would have a nurse come to the house and take me through this the fusion, which would take 6 hours. And they would ship the IVIG to the house, and it was
the
like
day before
and
they
it
would
was
come
like
drop it
a
off.
lot. It was like a 2-liter bottle of soda.
It was like no, but it was in little packets.
It was in little packets.
So it was like a huge thing. You put it in the fridge, and the next day the nurse comes and she does the thing.
So every time, once a month, the nurse would come to the house, and I would sit there for 6 hours and get my fusion done, and I would feel better every time. Every time, just a little bit better. And I started working out. Like I started doing anything that I could to keep moving forward. Like if I could move this better, I would move more. If I could do 10, I would do 11. If I could take 10 steps, I would just a little bit more every time. Yeah. And every month I would get a little bit better. I had to go to physical therapy. And I would do everything that I could to get a little bit better each time. And then as I read more and researched more, it's like, you know, one of the things that he said was, if you're going to do this, I said, well, how long am I going to have to do this? He said, well, you do it all the time. He's like, but if you can space it out.
Right. He's like, you're going to have to do this forever. But
right. You're going to have to do this
out.
forever. But if you can space it out, then maybe, you know, you can see how many more weeks you can go before you need the next fusion, right?
So instead of every 4, like then do 5.
So the first 3 months I did it every month. And then as I got a little bit stronger, then I was like, all right, so I'll go 5 weeks. And then I went 6 weeks, right? And then I was gonna go 8 weeks, the next one, but we had a trip coming up. We were going to Puerto Rico, and I didn't want to get stuck in Puerto Rico. And at this time, I don't know if I was in my head, but I don't want to get stuck in Puerto Rico and have a relapse. I'm like, let me just get the IVIG
to make sure I'm good.
We're good. We went to Puerto Rico, and again, at this point, like I'm better, but I'm still not 100%. My feet are numb, like I'm walking funny, but I'm better. So we go on the trip. So then I said, now I'm going to push it 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then I pushed it. And then I was going to go to a Tony Robbins event. I was going to go to UPW, and it was going to be in Dallas. I'm like, all right, I don't want to be in Dallas and something happened. So let me get it. Right. And then that one was the last time that I got it. I said, I went to my event and I said, I'm just going to push it until I feel something again. Mm-hmm. And I kept progressing and progressing and progressing and progressing. Until I was just a little bit stronger, where it felt normal. Yeah. Right. P.S. My feet are still numb.
I know. So it's like a new normal.
You know, as normal as it could be. But I was regaining a lot of the strength that I had, a lot of the mobility that I had. I was able to drive myself around. The new normal was there.
No wheelchair.
No wheelchair.
Just like a limp.
Right, like
hobbling.
Right, it was, you know, because you feel off balance too. But I didn't get the IVIG anymore, and then we made an appointment. We had a follow-up. We had a follow-up appointment a year later, and we went to the follow-up, and he's asking me a bunch of questions. You know, he's testing my strength. He's like, "Wow, you're getting stronger." He says, "You know, when was the last fusion that you had?" Mm-hmm. I said, "It's been 6 months." He's like, 6 months?
He's like, how?
He's like, I've never seen a case like this. And he's testing me again. Like I put my, like, you know, because I was training every day. I was working out as much as I could. I was getting back to where I was before. I'm like, all right, so what do I do now? He's like, I don't know. I've never seen a case like this.
And I'm like, okay, so like, what does this mean? Like, does he keep getting it? And he's like, I guess he's a unicorn. I'm like, that's the best you got? Like, a year supposedly to get the first appointment. We got in here, and then a year for the, like, that's the, and he was very confident. He's like, yeah, he's a unicorn. I'm like, is that scientific?
So he writes me another prescription, like an open prescription. He's like, if you ever feel it again, you know what to do. And I'm like, that's it? He's like, that's it. I'm like, all right. And after that, like little by little, just got better and better. And it isn't that, you know, here and there I'll get a cramp or a tingling or whatever, and it's always alarming. But I never felt weak like that. Again, my feet still are numb. They're very sensitive. Like that was the residual. And I've seen cases where people like don't recover. I try to share as much as I can in different chats and all that. Because when we were going through this, there was nothing to read. Like we didn't know, she happened to know somebody coincidentally, you know, which again,
well, I had posted about it, and he was like, does he have Guillain-Barré? I'm like, how do you know what that is?
Right.
And he's like, oh, because I had it. And I was like, oh, snap. Like, but that's the only person I've ever.
But isn't it funny, like now in retrospect, that you had to be working in that place to meet that person, so that fast forward years later, like we had somebody that we could ask. Because the thing is that the doctors know what they know, but
they haven't experienced it.
They don't know what it feels like. So what I wanted to was to talk to somebody that had gone through it.
Yeah.
Like, how long did it take you? What did you do? Right.
Yeah.
He had gotten special shoes and
he used to nap all the time.
Right.
It's like, you're so tired. Like we had talked about, like, yeah, having someone that's gone through it personally doesn't mean that that's the experience you're gonna have, because everyone's experience is unique. But at the very least, it gives you like some sort of dialogue, right? Because it doesn't exist. Like it's so rare.
But inside of all of that, I like the second time that I decided not to do anything, I ballooned up way over 300 pounds. So I know what that feels like. I had to start lifting weights again from zero. So I know what starting at the beginning looks like, or not having any strength. I had to learn how to walk. So as a matter of fact, I know what it actually feels like to not be able to do something. So when somebody says, you know, I can't do this, I have a hard time not putting that into perspective for them. Is it that you can't because I know what it's like to not be able to? Or is it that you don't want to, right? Because can't to me means you physically can't get up. I was in bed, I couldn't lift my hands, I couldn't stand up. That's what can't means. When you don't want to do something, that's completely different. But then you have to be clear with yourself. Yeah. Not my people when they're telling me that they can't, because they're telling me. But what you have to do is you have to be clear with yourself. You need to redefine or create new definitions for what words mean. Can't is you can't. You physically cannot. Right. I don't want to now is not can't.
I don't feel like it.
I don't feel like it. I'm tired. I'd rather stressed. Do something else. Listen, and this is not one of those, it could be any of these excuses and they're just, no. Let's just use words for what they mean, right? If you physically cannot move, it's okay to say that you can't. Other than that, it's a you don't want to. Do I have more patience? Yeah, listen, like it sucked. It was terrible. But it also gave me a better understanding of what being process oriented actually looks like. Because I had to go one step at a time. And that's how I coach, right? I coach one step at a time, because ultimately what you want is to get to the destination. You want to get to the outcome. But it doesn't always happen overnight, right? And I can speak from experience when I say it doesn't happen overnight. And you got to take it one step at a time. Literally. So it did provide an experience that I don't wish on anyone, but at the same time, I do have gratitude for, because I can share that. And I did go through that and came out on the other side of that. So I do have a sense of gratitude for it. even though at the time it was miserable, and the months and years after that,
Yeah.
I can look back and say, you know, I'm kind of glad that something like that happened and that we were able to come out on the other side, because we did come out on the other side stronger and better.
Big time.
And, you know, you can't get better at something, at anything, if you're not bad at it, right? So the, you know, good times create weak people, and weak people create bad times, and bad times create strong people, is literally the circle that we were in, right? Like, we were going through a very, very hard, difficult time, as difficult as you can imagine. But on the other side of that, because we kept going, we came out strong people, right? Without that, we couldn't have been here. So, and I think that a lot of times people avoid going through the hard part, right? Because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's like, well, do hard shit.
Yeah.
You know, because on the other side of doing hard shit is the version of you that actually is the best version of you. That next level is on the other side.
100%. I love that. And I think the excuses that people always give is, I'm busy, I'm tired, my kids, my husband, my finances, my this, my that. Like, yeah, there is excuses for all of us to not do anything.
And
you had a million excuses, like I said, physically, emotionally, financially.
And if you are listening
kids,
or watching and you are having a day where it's like going through any one of those reasons, then just put it in perspective. You know, like she said before, put your problems on a pile, right? It's like, which ones do you actually want? And is it that you can? Is it that you don't want to? Is it
not willing to?
Not willing to? And here's the thing: once you have clarity, maybe you really just don't want to.
That's okay too.
That's okay too. But don't make yourself feel bad because you don't want to. Just address it. Be like, great, I don't want to do that. Great. Now you've also eliminated, you know, the stress that comes with not doing it, and you've given up your rights to complain about the outcome that you're not going to get from doing the thing.
Yep.
Right? It's like you can't complain about not getting the outcome when you actually don't want to do the work.
Right.
Right? But at least you can have clarity and like, I actually don't even want that.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of times what people don't realize is that a lot of the things that you want require work, right? You want to get a degree, you're gonna have to show up to class, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to get, you know, a promotion at work, you're gonna have to work harder than everybody else. Like, everything requires work and effort.
Cycle of life.
Like, there's nothing that doesn't require effort.
I'm happy that we were able to share.
Anyway, so that's the story behind
that. That's a condensed version, but it's, like you said, such a blessing in so many ways.
And we're not going to tell the story today, but it got worse.
Oh, yeah.
It got a lot worse.
Everything
and
got
it's
worse.
been a long show so far. We will tell that story another day. But the story didn't end there. And
that was just the beginning.
That was just the beginning. So stay tuned for the next one.
Yeah.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye, guys.